The VP took me to dinner only to tell me they were restructuring the department. After building the engineering division from scratch, I was being replaced by the chairman's son. I accepted the news gracefully. I replied with a nod. No one realized that I had been preparing for this moment for nearly a year. My name is Michael. I'm 45, and for 14 years, I've been the cornerstone of Westbrook Industries' engineering department. Not that anyone would know from our company brochures or annual reports. I designed our product testing protocols when we were still using paper forms and sending faxes to confirm results. Transformed a 3-person design team into a 25-person operation that supported 5 manufacturing centers across the country. The production lines don't pause in Detroit, and neither did I. I wasn't planning to stay there long-term. Accepted the position as a temporary arrangement after my partner got a promotion in the area, something to pay the bills while I figured out my next career move. But I was exceptional at it. Truly exceptional. And eventually, those designs and systems became an extension of myself. Not on paper, but in every meaningful way. The dinner was at Bellini's, the type of restaurant with dim lighting and $50 steaks where executives entertain important clients. Not where you typically dismiss someone. But Victoria Bennett, our VP of Operations, always prioritized appearances. "Michael, your contributions have been tremendous," she said, sipping her wine. "But we need innovative thinking for the road ahead. Someone who understands where manufacturing is headed." Translation: We found someone with connections who won't challenge the board when they make questionable decisions. Richard's son just completed his engineering doctorate at Stanford. Exceptional young man, specializes in sustainable manufacturing processes. I nodded, taking a sip of water. "Who will manage the handover process?" Victoria appeared relieved. I wasn't creating a scene. "You'll have 2 months. We'll make the announcement after the monthly staff meeting." I reviewed the confidentiality agreement she brought before the dessert menu arrived, smiled professionally, and assured her I understood that business decisions were sometimes necessary. Back at my desk, I discovered my system permissions had already been reduced. My name removed from the leadership distribution list. They had decided my fate long before dinner, probably months earlier. That evening, I couldn't sleep. Not from anger, though it simmered beneath the surface. Not from worry about securing new employment, but because of what I had discovered in the project archives 6 months before. Unusual access attempts from an IP address I traced to executive offices, someone exploring files they shouldn't be able to access, reviewing my methodologies, my testing frameworks, contingency procedures. They weren't just replacing me. They were extracting everything I knew first. I relocated to Detroit 15 years ago, following Alex after we became engaged. Left a promising engineering position in Chicago because the opportunity was too good to pass up. We were determined, full of ambition. I figured something would turn up for me. The separation caught me completely off guard. 8 years building a home together, then suddenly a conversation that changed everything. "We've grown apart," Alex said. No arguments, no indications it was coming, just over. When Westbrook hired me, I was staying in a small apartment I could barely afford. They needed someone to reorganize their failing quality control systems after a major product recall. I was meant to be a short-term solution, but I recognized potential. These manufacturing executives understood machinery, but not processes. Their entire operation, millions in specialized equipment, hundreds of skilled workers, was operating on outdated methodologies. One major failure away from disaster. I presented Victoria a comprehensive 3-year improvement strategy. She approved the resources and gave me autonomy. For 4 years, I rarely took vacation days, redesigned every testing protocol, trained personnel, established redundancies and safeguards. When the industry-wide steel shortage hit, we were the only facility in the region that maintained production. The executive team took notice. Victoria began including me in strategic discussions. My budget doubled. I assembled a talented team, exceptional people like Teresa, who became my most trusted colleague, and Carlos, who could solve any design challenge presented to him. We weren't just engineering anymore. We were the foundation that allowed Westbrook to guarantee clients consistent quality and on-time delivery. Richard Palmer, the chairman, personally thanked me at the annual company gala in 2020. "You've revolutionized our manufacturing approach," he said. "This expansion wouldn't have been possible without your systems." I believed I'd found my purpose. Somewhere my expertise was valued. The first warning sign appeared last October. A consultant arriving without notice to evaluate our engineering protocols. She asked elementary questions about systems I had personally developed. When I inquired who had commissioned the evaluation, she mentioned the executive leadership and quickly changed topics. Then my access to quarterly strategy documents disappeared from the company portal. "Server maintenance," the explanation claimed. In February, Victoria began rescheduling our regular update meetings, always with plausible justifications. At the spring leadership conference, I overheard Richard discussing his son's upcoming graduation. "Natural talent for engineering," he said. "Major corporations trying to recruit him." I didn't think it significant at the time. I should have. The final indicator came when Teresa mentioned being invited to a planning session I should have attended. When she brought up my name, Victoria had redirected the conversation. "Something seemed strange," she told me. "Like they were making plans without your input." I dismissed her concerns. "Dedicated to a fault," my former partner used to say. 2 days after the dinner, I stood in the testing lab at 6:30 p.m., after most colleagues had departed. The rhythmic sound of equipment had always been soothing to me. These testing stations, the measurement devices, the quality control systems. I had selected every component, designed the validation procedures. This was my domain. I ran my hand along the edge of the main testing console. 14 years of my professional life embedded in these processes. Working late? I turned to find James Palmer, Richard's son, standing in the doorway. Polished appearance, designer glasses, effortless confidence. He couldn't have been older than 32. "Just routine verification," I said. "Can I help you with something?" "Getting acquainted with the department." He walked in with the assurance of someone who expected no challenges. "Victoria mentioned you'd be orienting me to everything soon." "Did she?" James examined the testing equipment. Impressive setup, somewhat conventional, but effective. Conventional. I had updated these processes just last year. "Your documentation is impressively detailed," he continued. "I've been reviewing your methodologies. I have several recommendations for progressive improvements." He spoke as though offering a valuable consultation. looking forward to discussing them. The response felt hollow. After he left, I sat at my workstation, checked the access records. James's credentials had been established 4 weeks before my dinner with Victoria. He'd been granted executive-level access privileges, already examined my entire methodology library. I messaged Carlos. Coffee tomorrow before work? Henry's Cafe, 6:45 a.m. That night, I drove to the Riverside Park, where Alex and I once spent Sunday afternoons. The water reflected city lights against the evening darkness. I remembered the day Victoria had promoted me to engineering director. "You're essential to this organization," she'd said. "We couldn't function without you." Apparently, essential components could be switched out too. Carlos had already arrived at the cafe when I got there the next morning, concern evident in his expression. He sensed something was wrong. "They're phasing me out," I stated directly. He nodded slowly. "I suspected as much. They've been asking unusual questions, having me explain your testing protocols." "Since when?" "About 3 weeks now." He looked apologetically at his coffee. "I'm sorry, Michael. I should have mentioned it." I didn't hold it against him. Carlos had family responsibilities, financial obligations. "What are you planning?" he asked. I hadn't realized I'd formulated a plan until he asked. But sitting there watching morning commuters rushing past the window, I felt a sense of clarity I hadn't experienced since my relationship ended. "They believe everything is documented," I said quietly. "But we both know that isn't true." Carlos leaned closer. "The proprietary methodologies, the specialized workflows." I nodded. "The customized validation procedures that aren't recorded in any manual. The specialized testing interfaces nobody else fully comprehends." "Michael, I'm not going to deliberately undermine anything," I assured him. "But I'm not giving away what belongs to me either." Carlos considered this for a moment, then nodded. He understood perfectly. "I need copies of everything I personally developed," I said. "And I need to know who remains loyal." The official announcement occurred during the staff meeting the following week. Victoria standing at the podium, discussing exciting changes and fresh perspectives. James beside her, nodding appropriately at key moments. "Michael has been fundamental in developing our engineering standards," Victoria said, avoiding eye contact with me. "And we appreciate his contributions as he assists us transitioning to James's leadership over the next 8 weeks." Whispers spread throughout the room. Most of the engineering team appeared shocked. Teresa's gaze found mine from across the space. A silent question. I gave her a barely perceptible nod. After the meeting, I requested a private discussion with Victoria and Human Resources. I pointed out that several of the systems James would be inheriting were developed by me independently using my own proprietary frameworks. "The employment agreement is explicit," said Margaret from HR, presenting a document. "Any innovations developed during your employment are company assets." "Not everything," I countered. "The Advanced Quality Management System was created before I joined Westbrook. I permitted the company use but maintained ownership. It's clearly stated in my original contract." Victoria shifted uncomfortably. "That was over a decade ago, Michael. The company has evolved significantly. So has the AQMS. Every enhancement, every integration was built upon my original design." I leaned forward. "I'm not trying to create difficulties. I simply want appropriate recognition for my intellectual property." Victoria and Margaret exchanged glances. "We'll investigate the matter," Victoria said finally. "Meanwhile, please focus on the transition with James." I recognized that expression. They were delaying intentionally. The next morning, my access to the development databases was limited. "Security protocol during transitions," the automated notification explained. James organized a team meeting without including me. When I attended anyway, he seemed irritated but masked it quickly. "Michael, good of you to join us. I was just outlining some modifications to the testing procedures." I stood near the entrance. "Interesting. Which procedures specifically?" "The primary assembly line validation processes," he said confidently. "We're going to optimize the protocols. Those protocols prevent quality failures during maximum production," I responded evenly. "They're specifically designed for our manufacturing equipment." James's smile tightened. "Contemporary systems don't require such elaborate procedures." "They're not elaborate, they're essential," Teresa interjected. "They're necessary adaptations for our specific production environment. Michael designed them after the 2019 product recall." The room fell silent. James's confidence faltered momentarily. Then, "Well, I appreciate the historical context, but we're implementing the streamlining initiative." He turned toward the presentation screen, effectively dismissing me. Later that day, I received correspondence from legal. The company was claiming complete ownership of all systems, including AQMS, citing a provision about incorporated technologies becoming company property. They offered me a technology acquisition bonus of $7,500. The true betrayal emerged the following day. I learned James had scheduled individual evaluations with each team member, not transition discussions, comprehensive performance reviews. He was determining who to retain. Carlos messaged me afterward. He questioned whether your systems were truly necessary or unnecessarily complex, fishing for criticism. That evening, I discovered an email from one of our manufacturing partners in my personal account. They were confused about a new service agreement Westbrook had sent, one I knew nothing about. I examined the document. Victoria had signed an arrangement transferring all my custom manufacturing integrations to an external technology provider, James's former university colleague's startup. They weren't simply removing me. They were dismantling my entire framework and redistributing it. When I attempted to access the archive servers to retrieve my original code, I discovered my credentials completely revoked. The situation had escalated. I needed leverage immediately. Westbrook hadn't merely been negligent. They had been deliberate. The timeline became apparent. James had been integrated months earlier, studying my systems, preparing to replace me while extracting all my knowledge. That evening, I contacted Emma Rodriguez, a patent attorney I had collaborated with previously. We met at a quiet restaurant far from the corporate district, the type of establishment Victoria would never visit. From a legal perspective, you're in a challenging position, Emma said after I explained the circumstances. But something seems unusual. Why force you out now? The company is performing exceptionally well. That's what puzzles me, I admitted. Let me conduct some research, she offered. Just information gathering, nothing invasive. 2 days later, Emma called me at 10:30 p.m. You need to see this. She had uncovered SEC filings showing Westbrook was preparing for an initial public offering. The filing was dependent on Westbrook demonstrating innovative engineering capabilities and progressive leadership. They're restructuring to enhance the IPO prospects, Emma explained. And your engineering systems are a major selling point. The valuation specifically references the proprietary quality management interface. My interface, the AQMS. There's additional information, Emma continued. Richard Palmer sold significant shares last quarter. The IPO would primarily benefit Victoria and the executive team. They receive substantial bonuses and expanded roles in the public company. The aspect that devastated me wasn't the IPO. It was discovering emails revealing Victoria and Richard had discussed replacing me over 7 months ago. While I was working extended hours resolving a critical manufacturing issue, they were interviewing James. I drove to the industrial park where I'd first conceptualized the AQMS architecture years ago when it was just a concept. Sat in my car until sunrise, watching daylight emerge over the manufacturing district. When I returned home, I located an old encrypted drive in my study, connected it, and found exactly what I needed. The original AQMS code, pre-Westbrook, documentation proving I'd initiated development 10 months before joining the company. I also uncovered the email communications, Victoria specifically requesting integration of AQMS with Westbrook systems. Her acknowledgement that it was my proprietary solution. Her commitment that we would formalize ownership arrangements once operations stabilized. I had trusted her completely. My mistake. The following day, James summoned me to a meeting with Victoria and Margaret from HR. We're expediting the transition, Victoria announced without preamble. Your final day will be next Friday. 4 weeks instead of 8, I observed. Any particular reason? James has demonstrated exceptional capability, Margaret stated smoothly. And frankly, Michael, your attitude hasn't facilitated an effective handover. I nodded thoughtfully. I see. We'll need you to complete all documentation and knowledge transfer by Wednesday, James added. Of course, I replied, maintaining composure. And regarding ownership of AQMS, have you had opportunity to review the original agreements? Victoria's expression hardened. Our legal department has determined that all integrated systems constitute company property. The separation package is generous, Michael. I recommend you accept it. I stood up. I'll have my attorney review the documentation. Don't complicate matters, Victoria cautioned. It won't alter the outcome. As I departed, I messaged Carlos. Contingency plan tonight. 8 hours later, Carlos handed me a secure drive in a shopping center parking lot. Everything you requested, he said quietly. Original source files, implementation logs, authentication credentials. I expressed gratitude, then asked, "Why are you assisting me?" He met my gaze directly. Because they consider us all interchangeable parts. I spent the weekend meticulously organizing everything. The original AQMS code, communications with Victoria, licensing agreements, timestamps proving I'd developed the core technology before Westbrook. Monday morning, I arrived early, found Teresa already at her workstation, looking exhausted. You heard about the accelerated timeline? She asked. I nodded. How is the team responding? Poorly. James called emergency sessions throughout the weekend, attempted to reverse engineer your validation system. She lowered her voice. It didn't proceed well. 4 quality alerts from assembly were missed. Any defective products shipped? No, but they had to halt production line 2 for 6 hours. Cost approximately $65,000 in lost production. I maintained a neutral expression. Unfortunate situation. Michael, she hesitated. I believe I'm next. James has been questioning whether my position is necessary. I had anticipated this. Teresa understood too much about actual operations. Do you trust me completely? I asked quietly. She didn't hesitate. Absolutely. I passed her a sealed envelope. If anything unusual occurs this week, open this. It explains everything. That afternoon, I consulted with 2 separate intellectual property attorneys. Paid priority fees to file provisional patents on critical components of AQMS, not the entire system, just the essential elements that enabled it to function with manufacturing equipment. On Tuesday, I finalized all transition documentation James requested, participated in his planning meeting, responded to questions professionally, the exemplary employee. Meanwhile, Emma was helping me establish a secure external server. By midnight, I had transferred all my original code, created a standalone version of AQMS that would operate independently from Westbrook's infrastructure. Wednesday morning, I discovered an invitation from a prominent industry competitor in my personal email, requesting a discussion about potential opportunities at their headquarters. They'd learned about my impending departure from Westbrook and were interested in my expertise. Someone was exploring alternatives. I forwarded the message to my attorney, then contacted the competitor's director of manufacturing, suggesting we meet after my official exit from Westbrook. They agreed immediately. That evening, I implemented the crucial element of my strategy. Using the access credentials Carlos had preserved, I updated 3 critical components of AQMS. I incorporated digital signature verification that would check whether the code had been modified by unauthorized users. I updated the license to expire in exactly 10 days. The day following my official departure, I established a clean legal transition process. The system would continue functioning if a proper licensing agreement was executed. Nothing destructive, nothing malicious, simply protecting my intellectual property. On Thursday, James called me into his office. Several team members indicate you've been behaving unusually, he said. Anything I should be aware of? Just concentrating on completing everything properly, I replied. He studied me suspiciously. We're changing all system passwords and access protocols tomorrow, following your departure. Standard procedure. Completely understandable, I said, though it won't impact the core functionality of AQMS. Meaning? Simply that the system is designed to operate regardless of administrative changes. That's its fundamental advantage. I could see him trying to determine if I was implying a threat or merely sharing information. He chose incorrectly. I think we've covered everything necessary. He dismissed me. Legal will meet with you tomorrow for final documentation. As I exited, Victoria passed me in the corridor. Barely acknowledged me. 14 years reduced to a passing glance. By midnight, everything was prepared. I sent one final verification to my private server. Implementation sequence Bravo 9 complete. The countdown had commenced. Friday morning, I surrendered my access card, signed the exit paperwork, declined the farewell gathering James had organized, much to Victoria's obvious relief. As I walked to my vehicle, Carlos called. "It's done," he said. James just reset all the administrative passwords. They're conducting a comprehensive system audit this afternoon. Thank you for the information, I replied, maintaining a neutral tone. What happens next? He asked. Now we wait. I spent the weekend at home, disregarded calls from unfamiliar numbers, rested better than I had in months. Monday morning at 10:42 a.m., precisely when production reached maximum capacity, every instance of AQMS across Westbrook's 5 facilities displayed identical messages. License expired. Please contact the developer for renewal. By 10:45, the first production line halted. By 11:15, all 5 facilities were offline. At 12:30, Victoria called me personally. What have you done? She attempted to sound authoritative, but I detected the panic. I didn't take any action, I responded calmly. The software license expired. As the developer and owner of AQMS, I'm available to discuss renewal terms. This is sabotage, she hissed. It's standard license management, I corrected her. Review the original integration agreement from 14 years ago. Section 9 explicitly states that Westbrook was licensing the technology, not acquiring ownership. Silence followed. I've forwarded a proper licensing agreement to your legal department, I continued. The terms are straightforward. Recognition of my ownership rights, appropriate compensation for continued usage, and a confidentiality agreement regarding the circumstances of my departure. That's extortion. Business, I replied. These situations arise occasionally. By 4 p.m., their attorneys had reviewed my documentation. By 6 p.m., the agreement was executed. 4 days later, I sat opposite the competitor's manufacturing director in their downtown offices. He presented a contract. We're expanding our Detroit operations, he said. We want you to direct the engineering integration as an independent consultant, not an employee. The compensation was double what Westbrook had paid me. Complete autonomy over my schedule and working location. What about my team at Westbrook? I inquired. The director's expression became serious. We're prepared to create positions for key personnel if they're interested in new opportunities. I signed the contract that same day. 3 weeks later, Teresa called to inform me James had been quietly removed from his position. The official explanation was that he had pursued alternative opportunities. The actual reason was that 2 major clients had threatened to cancel contracts after repeated quality issues. Victoria remained VP through the IPO, but her role in the public company was largely ceremonial. No substantial authority, no dedicated team, merely an impressive title and an office distant from decision-makers. I didn't experience the satisfaction I had anticipated, just a quiet certainty that I had taken necessary actions. The following month, I used my first consulting payment to place a deposit on a modest lakeside property. Nothing extravagant, just a peaceful retreat with a terrace overlooking the water. Somewhere I could watch sunsets and greet new dawns. Teresa joined my consulting practice 4 months later. Then Carlos, eventually half my former department, was collaborating with me, not under my supervision. Partners in a growing enterprise. I encountered Victoria at an industry conference approximately a year after everything transpired. She started to turn away, then paused, approached my table. You prevailed, she said simply. I observed her carefully, noticing the tension around her eyes, the slightly worn appearance. She had aged visibly. It wasn't about winning, I replied, genuinely meaning it. It was about recognition, understanding your true worth. She nodded once, then departed. I remained seated for some time, observing the city skyline across the river, contemplating systems, those we create, those we dismantle, and those that ultimately endure beyond our involvement.